Well, at this point, I still don't exactly completely figure out that Tom Manger is one of the perps. So, I just go ahead and go and try to make my complaints to the Bethesda police station, since the incident really happened just a few blocks from there. So I did promise the officers who showed up the day before Thanksgiving, I guess, that I was going to go down to the Bethesda station the following week, and I did that. So when I reached the Bethesda station, what happened is they set up, now they would not let, there were two police officers who were at the desk. Well, one perhaps was a civilian and was not, she was in uniform, but I think she's a civilian. So I think she wouldn't be taking my reporting of any crimes. But there was a male officer there, and I think it was his job to take any reports of crime that someone walks into the police station with. Now, the reason I went to the police station, obviously, it's much easier to give, hundreds of pages of evidence and talk to them, at their office. So, but what Tom Manger did is he ordered, he wouldn't let this officer actually take the report, even though that was his job to do it. So Tom Manger, it looks like what Tom Manger has, he has another officer there whose name is Officer Mark Julian. Now, Officer Mark Julian, he gets paid as a cop who puts his life on the line. But really, Officer Mark Julian is entirely in police administration. Now, they do have a separate police administration unit, but he's not in that. So we know, this is already some kind of unlawful thing that Tom Manger is doing, because the way the budget works is you have a certain number of officers who are in administration, and they don't really get the same kind of hazard pay and stuff as the street cops. So with Mark Julian, he's a cop on the beat, but he's really Tom Manger's lackey, and he sits at the Bethesda station, and he gets a lot of money for essentially working the desk. So he gets, I checked his pay, he gets $100,000 per year, and then he does some like security work on the side, and they pay him another 50 grand. So he does pretty good. He makes 150, and he's really not putting his life on the line anywhere. And I checked his caseload. He hasn't had anything for a long time. I think for Officer Mark Julian, what he's had is like 15 years ago. He was doing like security for a church, and an old woman stole a purse or something, so that shows up. So that's, I guess, the extent of his police work. So Officer Julian shows up. Well, if Officer Julian is coming to talk to me, then why is the other cop there? So we can kind of see the fraud and the entire wrongness of the whole situation, because I'm supposed to be giving my report to this other cop who is like about 28 years old, and you have Officer Mark Julian who's like 48, and he's like a supervisor, and he's not supposed to be the one taking the report. So he literally, now he takes my report. Well, he doesn't actually take my report. So what he does is he never lets me go back in and give a report. So he talks to me in the lobby. And if he's talking to me in the lobby, he has the other officer stand there like an absolute dummy. Right, the other officer, he's entirely mute. He doesn't speak at all, even though it was that officer's job to take the report. And so this is so he kind of makes a show that, well, I gave the report to that officer, and I really did, because that officer stood there exactly like a dummy. He didn't open his mouth at all. And so Officer Julian, when I speak to Officer Julian, so he doesn't touch the evidence I give him. So he doesn't want to take anything in his hand. Basically, he just tells me a whole bunch of lies while I'm in the lobby. So when I start telling him the crime, the first thing he says is that everything which happens in a medical facility is malpractice, and that's patently just completely wrong. I mean, you can have crimes happening in the medical facility. It happens all the time, and it's handled as a crime as long as it beats a threshold. Now, certain things can happen at a medical facility. It can look like a crime. Of course, if you touch someone, that's like simple assault, and so obviously the doctor's office, if you give them permission to touch you, it's not a crime. So, but once we differentiate, we know what's part of normal medical practice, and after that, it's a crime. So what he says is, the first thing he says is essentially that once I go for an MRI test, they can do anything to me, and they can bring anyone to the office, and anyone can come and do anything to me. All is completely wrong. They can only do the medical process, and if in fact it's some kind of a malpractice, okay, it can be a mistake coming from a deviation from the normal medical process, but it's not going to be completely something out of the blue. And also, what he says is that anyone else can come and do what they want. That's just not true. You only give consent to the person who's supposed to be giving you any kind of a medical service. So he first says that, but then, and I guess he shouldn't, for his sake, I guess he wasn't really ready to deal with me since it kind of came up quick. So I guess for him, he would have been better off if he just shut up and kept going at that point, but he stuck around. So I kind of asked him more and more questions. And so when I asked him, well, what about for the sex assault? Well, he says for the sex assault, well, unless there's closed circuit TV. Well, how can I get my hands on closed circuit TV for something happening at an MRI facility? They would hold the closed circuit TV, which means you have to go and ask them. The cop has to go there and make an investigation, go and ask them, do you have a closed circuit TV? But in the first place, the cop just has to go there and ask them, did you do this crime? That's like the basic investigation step, right? I mean, you don't have to even have any kind of evidence. You just have to ask the person, did you do it? And if they say they did it, or if they act really funny, then you know that they did it. How simple is that? That's how stuff works. You don't need to have something on camera. You just talk to them and they give something up. So then he keeps on going down that track. And so then I tell him, hey, and then I said, okay, then what about assault? Well, then for assault, he says, well, there's a 1 or a 3-year statute of limitations, but that's not really true. That's for simple assaults. In this state, in Maryland, you get assault and battery together. So for the more serious assault and battery, there is no statute of limitations. So there he's misstating it by saying there's a statute of limitations. So then I said, okay, you have a statute of limitations. Then, hey, why don't we go for attempted murder? Then he just comes right out and says, I'm not going to charge attempted murder. Well, if you say I'm not going to charge attempted murder, it means you did something on your discretion, right? So that's completely different than it's not possible to charge for attempted murder. So obviously he knows he starts getting very inconsistent, right? Because he says he's making like a different kind of excuse each time. First he says, okay, it should be handled as malpractice. Then he says, for a sex assault you need to have closed circuit TV. Then he says, it's simple assault, well, the statute of limitation is gone. Then he goes, oh, for attempted murder, well, if you already said it's to be looked at as malpractice, why do you even want to entertain attempted murder? You just go, hey, it's malpractice. It cannot be attempted murder. But Officer Julian did not say that it's not attempted murder or that it's malpractice. He said, I'm not going to charge attempted murder, which means without doing any investigation, he's already made up his mind that he's not going to charge attempted murder, which means this is kind of an absolute statement that he's already got that he's not going to do it. So that's his unwillingness to charge attempted murder. And so, which means attempted murder is there. This is what... And so then, finally, what I do is I ask Officer Julian, what if, now what so I kind of bring up the issue of somebody with an 8th grade education doing a crime with a gun or a car. And I say, well, the surgeon was able to do a similar crime, but he used his surgical tools like a syringe, and he was able to do a horrible crime. And so you are telling me that a surgeon can get away with the same crime because he has the intelligence and the skill to do the crime, to do it differently than someone with an 8th grade education. Then Officer Julian comes back and says, well, if the person with the 8th grade education did the same crime, he too can get off. Well, obviously, the person with the 8th grade education cannot use a surgeon's a brain surgeon skills at that to do a crime. He's left so very clearly this officer is setting up a double standard, but really it's not a matter of double standard. It's just a shifting bunch of lies, So it's not the position of the Montgomery County Police that if you are a surgeon and if you're so smart, you can do a crime using your surgical skills and you can get and it's okay. At the same time, if the best you can do is just to pick up a gun, you cannot get away with that crime. I know that's not their official position, and I know what they mean. And what they are saying is, well, Tom Manger did the crime, and Tom Manger's friends did the crime, so any convenient excuse will do. But even then, even taking that is an excuse, but we still have to hold the Montgomery County Police to what they said, and let it be known. Now, so what the Montgomery County Police is saying is, there's a double standard, and this is kind of the thing which came up in the Stanford sex assault case, where they specifically said a underprivileged person with 3 felony convictions gets a long jail sentence, and this perp who was there, he has like a privileged background, so he gets like almost nothing. So Officer Julian is talking about a very horrible double standard, which no one accepts. So, but I really don't think it's about a double standard. I know it's about a shifting set of excuses, just whatever excuses you need to make.